A lot of times when you're setting out on a creative endeavor, like you want to start a YouTube channel, you want to write a book, you want to write music, you have a health goal, all these different types of goals that you can have, particularly creative goals. I feel like it can be demotivating as time goes on, and you can kind of wonder, why isn't my motivation staying high? Why is it just declining? And there are a lot of factors involved. There's motivation and inspiration and discipline and skill and mastery, and there are all these things that kind of come together to create kind of a complex system, along with your emotions and how you're feeling about yourself. And so I want to talk about some things that I've noticed. So I have here a graph of your goal and how your motivation will change over time. And so for me personally, like when I think about, like when I set out with this YouTube channel, that was in 2020. So it's been 3-ish years now. And I've noticed some interesting things with my motivation. So when you start out at the new beginning, at the inception of something, your motivation is usually really high. There was something that got you to do it. And then as time goes on, it dips, and then maybe you'll get remotivated because of New Year, and it dips, and you get remotivated. And this goes on, and it seems like it's just trending downward. And you have these moments, like these brief moments where a new year maybe helps you, but in general, it's trending downward, and you just feel like, why can I not stay motivated? What is the deal? And I've thought that with myself, like, what is my deal? I want to do this thing, but I just feel like with every passing year, I get further and further and further away from like what I wanted to do in the first place and the inception. And I had a strong reason to do it, but as time goes on, you lose sight of it, and you're like, what was that strong reason? I don't know. And as you get going, you become more knowledgeable of all these other factors. And like with YouTube, you become knowledgeable of like click-through rate and how to get this, and all of a sudden there's all these numbers, and none of which are really making your motivation go up. You just learn all these things that you're not good at. You only knew a certain amount of things, but now you know all sorts of things that you're not good at, and you need to improve upon them, and it can be so demotivating. But there's another graph, and there's not only how your motivation is changing over time, but there's also your mastery, and the relationship between motivation and mastery can actually be the inverse of each other. So at the beginning, despite you not having that much skill, you were really motivated. So your mastery, your skill was low. And as time goes on, you get better and maybe you regress, but you get better, maybe you regress, and your skill is pretty much getting better and better as time goes on. And sometimes that dissonance is difficult. It's like, why am I objectively getting better, but my perceptions are telling me that I'm getting worse? Like my motivation to do the thing is worse, and I'm less starry-eyed, there's less rose-colored glasses, even though I'm objectively better. Like, what's the deal? Now, this relationship only goes on for a certain amount of time. It's not through the full extent of a project that your motivation's going down, your skill's going up. That is true for a window of time, but what if I told you this is just a zoomed-in graph? These two graphs are not forever. These are a zoomed-in amount of time, and that's how it feels in the moment. But if you zoom out, there's another graph. So this is a graph of your confidence, similar to motivation. I feel like confidence and motivation tend to follow each other a lot of times. And this is a graph that has been kind of quoted as being part of the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's not actually a very accurate graph of the Dunning-Kruger effect, but I do believe it's a very accurate graph of confidence regardless. At least I found it to be very true in my life. What this graph of the Dunning-Kruger effect says is that when you start out, you're very confident, and your confidence grows, and then you realize what you don't know. And then boom, you get down to this pit of despair, and then something happens, and there's a turning point, and that keeps going up. So the question is, what is this turning point? How does this change? And I would say that the graphs we looked at before, where your motivation's going down, that is this stretch of time, where your motivation / your confidence is going down, and your skill is going up, because this kind of represents as time goes on and your skill goes on. So your skill is increasing, but your confidence and motivation are decreasing. But it's only for that certain amount of time. And this could be months for some people, years for some people. This could be a very short amount of time. There's no set time frame for how quick this happens. And I believe that what changes your motivation, and the reason that your motivation increases and then it is trending downward and then it trends upward, I believe the reason that is that these upward chunks are when you're intrinsically motivated. And this downward chunk right here, when things are kind of going downward, that's when you're in a period of being externally motivated. So I think a lot of times what happens is if you want to write a book or you want to write a song, there was something that happened in your life that kind of spawned its inception. Something meaningful happened, something purposeful happened. It seemed fun, you had purpose, you had meaning. And so at the beginning, you have this kind of intrinsic motivation. And with the Dunning-Kruger effect, this would be kind of a section of false confidence, but I'm kind of using it differently. And this is your intrinsic motivation is going up. You're having fun, it's great, you're being yourself, and something happens. And right around here, this could be criticism. This could be you get your first taste of success and external metrics. The thing that marks extrinsic or external motivation is usually there's a system of punishment or rewards happening. So, and a lot of times people focus on like punishment is bad, but a lot of times if you're really motivated by rewards, that's bad as well. That's not ultimately helping you. And so something happens where, like in my case with the YouTube channel, I think getting the first taste of like there's some videos taking off and then you think, oh, I got to make that keep happening. Or there are negative YouTube comments and someone just like really goes in depth all the things you're doing wrong. And it becomes difficult to stay aligned to the purpose when you have these external rewards and punishments happening. At the beginning, you don't have any of that. No one knows who you are. There's no one talking about it. You know, I wasn't getting any negative comments, no positive comments. Just no one saw it. So it's easy to be yourself. But then as time goes on and you see, oh, people like it when I do this, I need to keep doing that. Or people don't like it when I do that, so I'm not going to do that. So you start, or at least I started, kind of molding myself to the types of things that did well and kind of going away from the things that didn't perform well on the channel. So there's this period of time where you kind of lose yourself because the markers of intrinsic motivation are it's personally rewarding. It's fun and you feel like there's purpose. Those are the kind of the main markers of it. You feel like there's autonomy over it and it's rewarding. And as soon as you become chained to all these external things, that's when you're kind of on the downhill. Now, at some point, there is a turning point where you go back to the inception, you go back to what really mattered, and you get back to the intrinsic motivation of doing things that are fun to you, it's rewarding to you, you're back to that initial purpose that you had at its inception, and things start going in the right direction. So at this turning point, right along here, this is where a lot of people quit because you have the option right there. When you see things going down, 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 you have the option and a lot of people will quit. So you can quit because you're not seeing the external markers that you want, or you can keep going and you say, what is the why? What is fun about this? What's rewarding about this? And let's make a change. But you have to make it to that turning point for anything to turn. And I think what's unfortunate about this whole graph is if you quit in the middle of this external portion, you really cut off all of your potential because the difference between point A and point B is really getting to your ultimate lived potential. But if you don't make it to that point, you're kind of always wondering what if, and it leads to bitterness and regret. If you quit during this external motivation part, you might start to form a bunch of beliefs about yourself that I couldn't do it, I'm not cut out for it, I was never meant to do it, life is meaningless, life is pointless. You start making a bunch of identity statements about yourself and beliefs about life and others, and this is just the way things work and everything's just pointless. But when you can see your potential, that's what the whole thing is about. A lot of times it's not even about the goal. It's not even about the book or the songwriting or the YouTube channel or whatever. It's about the person that you become on the way. And I think that's something that's kind of switched in me recently, is that it's not so much about the goal, but I'm becoming the type of person that doesn't quit, the type of person that has hope and endurance. And that's the type of person that I want to become. And I think it's so much less about what are people saying about things or whatever, because I want to become the type of person who's resilient and who reaches my goals and does what I say that I'm going to do. So I think we have some options. I think obviously what people would want to do is get out of that external phase and get into the internal motivation phase. And I tried to manufacture that for a long time because I kind of understood that there's value in things being internally rewarding versus constantly relying on external things like people or metrics or inspiration or things like that. I wanted to just manufacture it. I did all sorts of exercises. There are all sorts of purpose exercises you can do that were valuable, but they didn't change my motivation to be intrinsic. They were helpful, they gave me information. And in thinking about what was the turning point, how did I change that, I think it's just, it has to naturally kind of evolve in every person's journey. Despite me trying to manufacture it, I could never manufacture it. It's something that had to happen. And for me, I'm at about the 3-year mark, and now I feel like something has actually authentically shifted despite my best efforts to manufacture it. And so I think it's everyone's timing and everyone's journey. I don't think you have to go through an externally motivated phase. I think a lot of people do. I think it's something that I kind of went through, and I feel like I'm just now coming out on the other side of it. So because I feel that it's difficult to manufacture, you have some options. There are things you can do while you're in the external phase to kind of help things, and then things that you can do to get into the intrinsic phase. The first thing that I would say is have some accountability. That's an extrinsic thing, having accountability. Now, I hate actually the whole idea of accountability partners. I don't know, there's something that just like doesn't resonate with me or whatever. But like my husband was in Israel, and I realized how much we kind of feed off each other motivation wise. So we get up every morning, and I work on YouTube, and he works on music from 6 to 7 a.m. before I go to school. And when he was gone for 10 days, I completely fell off, and I realized just like, wow, this is so important. Having someone keep you accountable is so helpful. It's very underrated. I'm not sure why I spent so much time avoiding that, but I think it was just present in my life, and I didn't realize the effect it was having. Another thing that I'm doing is I am extrinsically motivated by money. And so what I do is every time I get paid for YouTube, I give my husband that paycheck. And then every week, if I have worked every morning on YouTube and 2 videos have came out, then he pays me the money back. And if I don't get it done, then he gets to keep it. And that's something I'm very extrinsically motivated by money. Probably always going to be somewhat extrinsically motivated by it. And so I get a lot more done. And it's like, you don't want to be only extrinsically motivated, but is it helpful to have some accountability? Yeah, it's been very helpful. The other thing I would say is, what worked for you in the past? Like, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. If there was a time where you were doing the things you wanted to do, you were writing the book, you were writing the songs, what worked for you? Think back, what were you doing? And when I think back to when I would think back, I'm like, oh, I was going to a coffee shop every morning at 6 a.m. Having the change of external environment was really helpful. And maybe, for you it's something else, but you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like if there was something that worked for you in the past, just keep doing that thing. Like I am a firm believer that you have the strategies. You know what works for you and your preferences. So just do more of those things that work for you. So moving on to the internal motivation side, there are kind of 3 markers for if something is intrinsically rewarding to a person. And the first one is if you feel that you have autonomy over it and control over it. And, basically, is it fun to you? Is this something that you feel like you're good at and is fun to you? And that's one of the most basic things. Is it fun? And if it's not fun, you have to think about, why are you doing it? And have you gotten away from the parts that actually are fun to you? Incorporate those back in at the beginning, at the inception. What was fun to you? And that's why things will start working more. That's why they go on the uphill, because it's fun and you enjoy it and you do things that you enjoy. That's just a simple fact. You will consistently do things that you enjoy, and you don't consistently do things that you don't enjoy. So like with working out, I don't enjoy running. I have never consistently ran in my life, but I consistently dance. It's so easy to get me to consistently dance. I love to bike. It's so easy for me to consistently bike because I just actually enjoy it. The next thing is it rewarding in that the process is rewarding. And a big difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation is that extrinsically, it's always the carrot on the stick that's rewarding. It's the money that's rewarding, or the likes or whatever. But the actual process isn't rewarding or fun. And I think you have to stop thinking of yourself, or at least I have to stop thinking of myself as like, this is the great person, this is my potential or whatever. This whole journey, the ups and downs, that's how I become that person. That's how you become the person that takes risks. And I think that is rewarding to me, that I feel that I'm changing the type of person that I am, from someone who's fearful to brave, to someone who is like insecure about YouTube comments, to someone who just doesn't care because there's like a solid identity, something that I know who I am, I know what I believe, I will stand up for what I believe. And there's a difference between like you know, temporarily fun and like long-term fun? Like, is it rewarding and it's contributing to your purpose and moving the needle? And if you died and hadn't done this thing, does that feel life-sucking and full of regret? You know, you want to take risks. You want to be a person who does what you say you're going to do. You want to get through that external phase, so you don't become, you know, a bitter person. You want to do the things that you say you're going to do. And the final thing is similar to, is the process rewarding? But do you feel that you're helping people? Like, is there a purpose behind it? When you think back to like the inception of something, there usually was a strong, purposeful reason that you wanted to do this before you got sidetracked with all these other things. And like when I think of the case of this YouTube channel, when I go back to the inception, it was because I had a breast lump and I fell apart for months. I got into this mindset where I thought I was going to die, and I was kind of dramatic about it, to be honest, but it was a big breast lump and it took a long time to figure out. But I actually legitimately got in the mindset where I thought I was going to die, and I was crying for days and days and days. And what was so hard about it was that I hadn't done anything that I actually wanted to do. And I never wanted anyone to be in that place again. I said, I don't want anyone to be in this place where you are confronted with death and you think, I did nothing that I wanted to do because I was afraid and timid. And that was the reason. That's why I started this whole thing. I want people to do the thing. If you want to write a book, if you want to start a YouTube channel, if you feel that you want to create in some way, which I think everyone does want to create in some way, entrepreneurial, whatever, you want to better yourself, do it. And that was the message I had to myself. Why haven't you done it? And once everything was resolved, I said, I'm going to do the things that I want to do, and I'm going to help other people do the things that they want to do. I'm going to help people expand themselves. I'm going to help people take risks, because that's the person that I want to be, and that's what I want to kind of give to other people, permission to take risks and do things. And this spot right here is called, on a lot of Dunning-Kruger graphs, is called the Valley of Despair. And it's at that point where you're kind of at your lowest. You've gained the most knowledge, but your confidence and motivation are at their lowest. And that Valley of Despair is where everything changes. I think I've started to learn that anytime I go through something hard, it always like slingshots me into the next best phase of my life. Like that breast lump scenario was so hard, and it just like slingshotted me into a whole different career pretty much. Or I had like a depressing time in Idaho, and it just slingshotted me to San Francisco, and I'm loving it now. And so I've kind of learned that low points are usually actually turning points. As you get closer and closer, you will learn some things. It doesn't go on forever. You put in your time. It's a different amount of time for everyone, but you put in the time and it will change. You'll learn some things. You'll get enough punishment, enough rewards to figure out that it's kind of meaningless, and that meaningless will push you to find meaning. Even though it's hard to be in a time of pointlessness and meaninglessness, it will push you to find meaning, and then that's when everything changes, and then you start to get some lift. Continue being brave, because you're worth it, and it's worth it, I promise. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Bye.